Here we are with another top 10 list, but this time we are doing melees. Now, I have recently done a top 20 weapons going over all the different types of weapons, but I wanted to add some different ones in this list that are really good and fun to play. Like any list, it's not the be all or end all. They are all just really good options. Some are popular, some are different. So please don't think that this is the be all or end all list. Trigger warning. Some of these builds will have melee influence, so if you don't like it, which I completely understand, for the most part, I don't like it too. Just don't use the influence builds or use another arcane that you like. I'm going to be showing many builds in this video, and if you want to make them budget, use the base mods or just earlier mods and then work towards the end game setups. First up is the Rakta Dark Dagger. I have mentioned this wonderful dagger multiple times in recent videos, but I have to add it in here one more time. And the sole reason for this is because of this mod that I completely forgot about. Amalgam Argonac Metal Auger. Damage from daggers reduces armor by 6. The unique trait of the Rakta Dark Dagger is called Mind Haze. Damage dealt to enemies affected by radiation will leech 5% of damage as shields. Put on melee influence and you will literally just not die with every frame that has shields. Pretty much every time I have mentioned this dagger before, it's been for pure utility or staying alive, but I've never considered it to be a full-on damage-based weapon, even though the stats are pretty good for it. So, we make use of this damage-based build right here. Put on the Amalgam Argonac mod, we have gas spreading with influence, radiation to distract enemies and leech shields, and on top of this, melee influence technically procs the Argonac mod, although from my initial testing it seems only the electricity that is spread from melee influence will actually strip enemies' armor, as if it's dealing the damage from the dagger, but not something like gas and so on. It is difficult for me to 100% confirm this, but this is what I think is going on, so it's not fully consistent. Either way, you can still somewhat mass armor strip with this dagger, and it's just great. Yeah, I won't lie to you guys, this is one of the craziest setups ever. I don't know why or how this flew past my radar, but damn, this is actually really strong. You can switch out the Bane for reach if you want more range, and actually you do not need the Argonac if you don't want to. The armor stripping is just a bonus, but the damage is more than enough by itself. I mean, it's melee influence, let's be real. Pairing this with Valkyr is just ridiculous, or just any frame that you see fit. That's the beauty of this dagger. The utility build helping you to stay alive looks like this, focusing on more status chance and more status duration, which is really important for the unique trait. Here, all we do is just quickly proc influence on a bunch of enemies, and then our frame just stays alive for super long. I have to recommend this dagger. You have to give it a go. It's super fun and satisfying. Next up is the Syam. The Syam is a little bit of a different one, I will be honest. We are going to be focusing on the heavy attack of this melee. Recently, I have fallen in love with this hidden gem. You see, the Syam by itself is already a good weapon. It's a Nakana. Let's be real, all Nakanas are good in Warframe. The heavy attack, however, sends out a heat wave that goes either horizontal or vertical depending on which heavy attack animation you're doing. This shockwave deals heat damage and travels along the floor up to 230 meters, which again, I'm not 100% sure that that's true, but it does travel a fair distance. The first horizontal heavy attack deals heat damage and a forced impact proc. The vertical heavy attack, which is the second heavy attack, deals heat damage only. The shockwave is affected by melee mods like Condition Overload, Elemental mods, and more, but the crazy thing about this melee is the fact that Condition Overload is multiplicative to base damage sources like Pressure Point on the heavy attack wave. This means putting Pressure Point and Condition Overload actually makes the shockwave do insane damage. Pairing this with a primer companion, Wrathful Advance, and well, you're looking at damage like this. But I will say though, this is for the most part another influence build. Using this with Clover or Vault with Wrathful Advance and Shock Trooper allows you this melee to just do millions of damage. It is absurd. It can be used on other Warframes, of course. It can work with an exposure setup too and a duplicate build, but the Syam does shine the most with influence. I have two setups right here. This one is for the Shock Trooper on your Warframe, and if you don't, then you can just remove a Bane and go for electricity. The second influence is more for putting it onto random Warframes, which is a gas influence setup, which is super powerful. I have to say again, Kulova with this thing just is perfect, does millions of damage, his passive works well with it, and if you pair it with purple shards, it's even better. I would recommend building it for heavy attacks and also making use of Arcane Strike on your Warframe and putting in heavy attack wind-up speed just to make this weapon feel a bit better. Honestly, if you want to just switch your brain off and spam heavy attacks all day, then you have to give this melee a go. Up next is the Vastilok. I recently did a Gunblades video and I have to say that these things are just simply fantastic. They are crazy powerful with quite a few melee arcanes. They are just fun to play once you get the hang of them. The Vastilok is the one I'm going to mention on this list for the pure fact that it has the longest fall off distance out of the other Gunblades. It has a 23 to 49 meter fall off distance. Slap on melee influence and well, you have a ranged nuke, shredding absolutely everything. Pairing it with WarframeFlo Advanced, well, then you have a red critting influence nuke. But if that doesn't tickle your fancy, Vortex is absolutely amazing with Gunblades, Crescendo if you want to go all in on the 12 times heavy attack builds, and Exposure is also super powerful. If you have not tried Gunblades, I recommend you go and check out my full video on them. They are absolutely insane when you learn how to use them. They can be very versatile, very useful for some enemies when it comes to shattering impact. It's really fun. And if you're going to go and use them, please use bullet dance, as this stance allows you to shoot the most and fastest. Before we go on to the next melee, could I ask you to take a second to smash the like button? It goes a long way for me. Thank you so much, my lovely tenor. Harmony is next. This side is and always will be one of the strongest melees in the game for the simple fact of its unique trait, harmonic resonance. This allows your heavy attack to deal all of the damage over time status effects into a single instance, which is just expedite suffering in a weapon. It also has increased duration of said status effects by 30%. This means every single damage over time element will allow it to do ridiculous damage when you heavy attack, and the longer the status duration, even better. It's more of a single target focus setup or killing a few enemies at once but hitting ridiculously hard. Because it's a scythe, we have the Reaping Spiral stance. Pairing this with melee afflictions will increase the multiple, damage over time status effects even more. It's just perfect for it. Expresses enough that this weapon is just beyond disgusting with its damage. The three builds that I like to use are as follows: a pure slash focused setup, an influence build with gas, and you can also make use of Vortex too. You cannot go wrong with Harmony. It's insane. Up next is the Coda Hirudo. This weapon is so much fun to play. They are sparring melees that just scale incredibly well with Affliction. The unique trait does have lifesteal, which is very nice for health tanking or health-based frames. Scaling attack speed and using Tenakai with these melees is just pure dopamine injection. Because it's a Coda weapon, you can choose the element that you like. I opted for heat so I could make gas or blast. I have three setups right here: Afflictions, which is my favorite, going for gas; Exposure, which is amazing for just pure damage; and Doherty, since the Hirudo deals mainly puncture damage. You can slap these melees onto any Warframe and they will be amazing. Super high attack speed is where these things will shine. I will be making a full video on fist and sparring melees, so stay tuned for that in the future. They are slept on and they're great. Next is the Keratinos. I have always had these claws, but just the other day I realized how amazing the Keratinos are. At 12x combo, if you heavy attack, it will grant you 2.8 meters of range to all melee attacks for 180 seconds. This means we gain 7.5 meters of range with primed reach. Use afflictions with Familiar and Storm, you will melt enemies. This is the afflictions build that I opted for. The Keratinos do have innate viral, meaning you can go for a dot element like gas or heat. A melee vortex setup is also quite, pretty good with these things. I did put magnetic on my Dagger primer for vortex, and when you do gain the unique bonus, the claws actually grow, which is pretty cool. Overall, the Keratinos is just a solid melee that works and does good damage. That's it. Next up is the Quassus Prime. These Warframes are actually pretty strong when paired with the right arcane and Warframe. Its unique trait will throw out daggers on heavy attack. The first heavy attack will send out 18 daggers with a 2.5 damage multiplier. The second heavy attack will throw 9 daggers with a 5 times damage multiplier, which is pretty much the same thing. These daggers will also guarantee slash on hit, which is nice and all. They are affected by mods and so on. They have innate 2 meters of punch through. Building for pure heavy attack is the way here, in my opinion. Opting for a triple galvanized setup so we can increase the damage from the slash procs with Elementalist, reflex to scale to 5 times combo multiplier to scale the heavy attacks, and steel for more crit damage. Heavy attack wind up speed is also amazing here. I actually went for Vortex as the main build to pull enemies in so that when you heavy attack, the daggers are sent out right in front of the enemies, shredding all of them at once because you have punch through. It's great. But another setup that I want to mention, which is a bit weird, is Afflictions. Afflictions works, but like I said, weirdly. The daggers won't proc afflictions themselves, but the actual heavy attack animation will. This means that if you add reach and even opportunities reach in the Tenakai slot, you will throw out the daggers, dealing ridiculous damage from them, but actually proccing afflictions with the attack if you're close enough. This multiplies your damage and pretty much one-shots anything. One thing that I can say with the Quassus is using Lavos with Valence Formation for the daggers is by far the best synergy, or even frames like Citrine, Valkyr, Clerva, and Varuna, but definitely Valence Formation is just disgusting with this melee. You have to give it a go. The Quassus Prime is just super fun and satisfying. And now we move on to the Incarnons for the last 3 weapons on this list. The first Incarnon is the Bow Incarnon. I know I spoke about this Incarnon in the previous video, I'm aware, but man, I absolutely love the Bow Incarnon with its wonderful 10.8 meters of range. 10.8 meters of range is just so fun to use in weapons, plus it's a stick that bonks enemies on the head and procs afflictions like crazy. Evolutions that I went for were Swordsman Flourish, Orokin Reach, and Absolute Dominion. Although you can switch it to Subtle Force if you'd like. Slap on Primed Reach and you are good to go with this melee. Any element that you want to use with melee afflictions will work insanely well. Yeah, sure, you can opt for Influence or the others, but I found Clashing Forest with afflictions to be the best. Melee Exposure, however, is also really good for pure damage. The Bow Incarnon is fun. It's fast, it does ridiculous damage with the Incarnate form. When you activate it, you gain 20% sprint speed, 20% parkour velocity, which means you move faster. It's just an amazing all-rounder Incarnon to offer you a lot. Pairing this stick with the right frames, you just cannot beat it. With the Clashing Forest stance, use the forward block attack combo to quite literally kick enemies in the face. It's just so funny when paired with Blast, you have to try it. Can't stress this enough, get your hands on this Incarnon. It is by far my personal favorite. Next is the Nami Solo. This is actually the first time I think I'm speaking about this Incarnon. The Nami Solo is a machete that does insane damage with the Incarnate form, and the main reason for this is because of its wonderful increased base follow-through evolution. Plus, the Incarnate form grants us the same stats that the Bow Incarnate does, with +3 range, 20% sprint speed, and 20% parkour velocity. With this melee, we have 7.5 meters of range, with 100% follow-through, meaning maximum damage. The Machete stance heavy attack is an AoE radius heavy attack that will hit enemies in a circle, so running through groups and using Tenakai and spinning equals death. The stats of this weapon are already pretty good with really decent status chance and crit. It's a slash based weapon, which is pretty nice. The evolutions that I went for were Brigand's Frenzy, Lone Blade, and Versatile Creed. I do have 3 builds for the Nami Solo. The first one is Afflictions. Afflictions isn't technically the best arcane to use with machetes because of the stances, since the neutral attack only drops enemies at the end of the sequence, but the forward block attack and neutral block attack will proc afflictions quite quickly. The heavy attack spin, however, will not proc, so just be warned with that. This is the build right here. A Vortex setup is absolutely perfect with gas. Pull enemies in, Tenakai heavy attack to spin and hit pretty much every enemy with 100% follow through, and over 100% status chance with Weeping Wounds. Yeah, sign me up with this one, this shit is strong. I do have Magnetic on my companion to proc Vortex easier, and melee exposure is really nice for raw damage if you'd like to go for that. Overall, the Nami Solo is just fun. I plan on using it a bit more because it is very, very strong. And finally, the last one on the list is the dual Ichor Incarnon. Many of you know the dual Ichor Incarnon by now, and that is because of its wonderful toxin damage fields that you create when you kill an enemy. This field will deal damage to nearby enemies that walk near it, lasting 7 seconds. However, what makes them broken is the fact that the clouds will inherit elements that you have modded for. Enemies killed by these fields or clouds, whatever you want to call them, will spawn another, creating a chain effect. This is stupidly powerful, and like I said, just creates a chain of death if the enemy density is enough. The dual Ichor Incarnons do shine the most with melee influence, but honestly we have seen enough of melee influence, so I want to show other builds that work really well with these clouds. The evolutions that I went for were Ronin's Rush, Orokin Reach, and Absolute Valor. The main build that I like to use is none other than melee afflictions, and you can use Blast or Gas. I opted for Gas since the clouds inherit the dots from gas clouds, which means ridiculous damage. Paired with Affliction scaling, it just melts enemies. Carving Mantis is by far my favorite stance to use with the dual swords. The forward block attack combo lunges at enemies as well, proccing afflictions a lot. Melee exposure, however, is also incredibly powerful with these. The melee vortex setup, however, is the exact same as the affliction setup, just with melee vortex as the arcane, of course. And again, companion has magnetic. These three are my go-to for now because I'm bored of melee influence. I know, even though I've shown a few builds here, there's only a few weapons that I like melee influence with. I don't like every melee weapon to be influence. The dual Ichors are a no-brainer at being one of the best melees in the game. You cannot go wrong with them. And that concludes the list. Again, not the be-all or end-all, remember that. Let me know in the comments below your top 5 melees you like to use. Hope you enjoyed the video, and a massive thank you to our channel members. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your support. I will see you all in the next video.